On our guest line once again, we welcome former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. It was right out of the Dick Cheney playbook, say some of the Democrats, Newt.
Well, Callista and I were invited by Speaker Boehner to come to the speech. We were very honored to be there. And that was certainly not the speech I heard, but I'm not sure Yarmouth listened to the speech. The speech I heard was a man who genuinely fears for his country's survival. He had said earlier in the week that Americans talk about national security, Israelis talk about surviving, and I think that's an important distinction. He believes, with great sincerity, that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, that the entire state of Israel may disappear. We would have the equivalent of a second Holocaust in a matter of seconds, and that the Iranian dictatorship openly says so. In fact, he quoted tweets in English from the head of the Iranian dictatorship saying that Israel has to disappear. Now, I think, if you have a neighbor who's trying to get a nuclear weapon who says, I want to wipe you out, it's pretty smart on your part to believe that they actually mean what they're saying.
Yeah, why don't we not believe them? You're a political warrior. No one would doubt your political instincts. As Speaker of the House, you, I think, demonstrated great respect for the title that you held. Yesterday, Nancy Pelosi chose to show up and, according to observers, just basically carry on like a child throwing a temper tantrum in kindergarten all through the speech, turning her back on Bibi Netanyahu, storming out at the very end before he was even finished. What do you make of the way Democrats have treated Benjamin Netanyahu? I'm just trying to picture Republicans acting this way towards, a black world leader. Can you imagine what the outcry if somebody else would receive the kind of disrespect that Netanyahu and Israel have received from these Democrats?
Well, I just remember the response to Rudy Giuliani a few weeks ago, right, or the response to Joe Wilson a couple of years ago when he said, to President Obama, you lie. All of a sudden it's a terrible thing. I think that you have to start with the premise that Nancy Pelosi represents the hard left wing of the Democratic Party. They are alienated from virtually everything that involves reality. They're certainly alienated from Bibi Netanyahu. I thought what she did was childish and demeaning. And
could you and Callista see her from where you were sitting?
We were sitting actually directly behind her, and you could see her. And ironically, the speaker's seats in the gallery are on the Democratic side, so we were able to get a pretty good view of the Democrats.
I'm sorry.
Interestingly, by the way, because 55 Democrats had said they wouldn't attend, there were a whole bunch of Republicans sitting on the Democratic side, so that there were no empty seats.
Good.
And a surprising number of people on the Democratic side kept jumping up applauding because the Republicans were there. But to be fair, people like Chuck Schumer were also applauding. I mean, Schumer led the applause on several occasions. And I think there's a bipartisan coalition which further drives the hardline people like Pelosi, wacko, in that there are an increasing number of Democrats who believe that Iran is dangerous, that the Obama policy is too weak, and that something has to be done.
I saw a tweet that said quite clearly, Bibi Netanyahu believes in American exceptionalism. Too bad Obama doesn't.
Well, there's a certain amount of truth to that. Netanyahu is a very old friend of the United States. I knew him back in the 1980s in the Reagan years. He and Jack Kemp and I used to have lunch in the Capitol when he was a very junior politician in Israel. He and Sarah have been good friends to Callista and me. And he's a person who loves America, and equally important, he's a person who understands that freedom on the planet will not survive without the United States, that there's no other country capable of sustaining freedom against the forces of evil.
Speaking of freedom, at the Iowa Freedom Summit, you gave a speech about the threat of Islamic and radical Islamism and terrorism. It was as good a speech on the subject as anybody has ever seen. It's gotten hundreds of thousands of views. I want to remind our listeners to go to gingrichproductions.com to see the full speech. It's absolutely brilliant. Nobody understands the threat better than you do. And I think nobody understands the perils of politics right now domestically. We've got our hands full. I mean, here we go this week, lost in the Netanyahu speech was what many of us believe was sort of a cave-in. John Boehner announcing, frankly, that, we're going to give Obama what he wants, a clean bill on this executive order on immigration, no strings attached, basically. Newt, you know how many millions of Americans have been disappointed in this.
Well, absolutely, and I think, frankly, the Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate was simply outmaneuvered. There was an easy way to solve it. They should have divided the Homeland Security bill into two parts, taken everything that was national security and sent it over without anything attached to it, and taunted the Democrats into how are they going to block all the national security components, and then taken all of the political and administrative and other pieces, which would have been hundreds of millions of dollars, and attached the prohibition on the president's immigration policy, and basically said, look, we don't care if we don't fund this stuff for the entire rest of the year. I mean, if you want to just close that part of the department, be our guest.
Knock yourself out. Yeah, why? What would have happened?
I don't understand the absence of strategic planning by both the House and Senate Republicans. You cannot get into fights like this unless you've thought them through, or you're going to lose. And you've got to work back from victory, which means you've got to design an outcome that you can force to happen, because neither the news media nor the president's going to give you a break, and that's just reality. And unless you're prepared to live in the real world, you're not going to be able to provide leadership.
Well, and you say you don't understand it. I mean, you were always about strategy. You've got to strategize your way into success, but there's a shortage.
There's no question this was a mistake, and I think that the House and Senate Republican leadership have to come to grips with the fact that this was a mistake. They're going to have, the nice thing about Obama is they're going to have new opportunities. This effort on his part to ban ammunition illegally, for example, may bring to bear every person in America who believes in the Second Amendment, and that's now a majority view. I mean, the belief in the right to bear arms has gone up every single year that Obama's been president, and I think that it's very likely that you're going to see very strong support, and that would be a fight that I think could be won. The trick is to pick the battlefield we can afford to fight, and you don't do that on national security grounds. But I wouldn't have any problem with taking, for example, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, attached to it a prohibition on the ammunition ban, and basically say, look, you want to close the department for a year, be my guest.
Newt Gingrich is with us. Again, I remind you to go to gingrichproductions.com. You want to see Newt's speech at the Iowa Freedom Summit. It's there online. You also can get his newsletters. It's one of the first sites I go to every day, gingrichproductions.com. Newt, you told The Hill recently that you predict a governor will wind up being elected president in 2016. I interviewed Governor Bobby Jindal of Louisiana this week. Wow, what an impressive guy he is.
Well, look, we have a bunch of absolutely first-rate governors who have done real things. They've achieved real things. They haven't been tied up in the gridlock and argument of Washington. And Bobby Jindal certainly is one of those. He's one of the leading policy governors in the U.S. So is Scott Walker, who I would argue comes as close to a front runner as anybody right now. Mm-hmm. But you've also got Rick Perry, John Kasich, Jeb Bush, Mike Huckabee, Chris Christie. I mean, there are a whole bunch of talented people out there who are potentially going to be running, and it's going to be a very, very good field. We've got some terrific senators who I like very, very much, but my instinct is that given the gridlock in Washington, given the arguments and the speeches in Washington, people are going to be eager for somebody who actually has a track record of getting things done, and that's going to give governors a big advantage.
There's a narrative emerging that Hillary is overall pretty boring, and none of these guys on the Republican front are boring. I mean, there is a lot to be said for this depth of the bench right now. For a lot of us, it's sort of like, holy cow, which direction do we go? There's so many to look at right now, so many candidates.
That's right, and the fact is, at the state level, Republican governors have been really doing terrific projects. They've really reformed government. Yep. They've really, balanced the budget. They've really thought seriously about how to have a better education, better health care, better highways. So there's a lot of very creative, positive thinking, none of which has penetrated Hillary's camp. But Hillary has a bigger problem. I mean, Hillary, I think, has just plain broken the law. And I think we're going to find out that she has behaved in ways that are so unbelievable that she may be as likely to face a prosecutor as to face the voters by the time this is all done.
When you've got the New York Times begrudgingly admitting that something is really rotten in Denmark over this private email situation when she was Secretary of State, you may have a problem on your hands.
Well, that's right. Plus, remember, there's a provision in the Constitution against federal officials getting money from foreigners. And the Founding Fathers were very worried about, bribery, and I don't think running as the best president foreign money can buy is a very good campaign slogan.
But to many of us, all right, so something looks terrible here, and maybe they can substantiate that she broke the law and violated all kinds of. Nothing seems to stick to her. Benghazi, anyone? I mean, nothing sticks.
Well, look, the Clinton model since 1980 when he lost, he figured out after the 1980 campaign that if he could raise enough money, he could drown his opponents. And they became a machine at raising money. They've raised over $2 billion for the Clinton Foundation. And their theory of life is, you can throw mud at them, you can scar them up, you can yell at them, but they just keep coming. And so if you don't actually beat them, they couldn't care less. They expect it to be this bad. And that means that they behave in ways that become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah, Charles C.W. Cook says the problem right now, Hillary has of late fallen disastrously deep into the professional celebrity's worst trap. She's begun to believe her own hype. But even her supporters are saying, wait a minute, this is bad.
Look, I think any American patriot has to look at the number of foreign dictatorships who are the opposite of our values, who have given them millions of dollars. And ask yourself the question, in the famous Hillary commercial where the phone rings at 3 in the morning, which dictators are going to be and what are they going to ask her for?
Well, one of the prayers I have as we move forward and try to get a Republican elected next year is that Republican would be smart and sane enough to include Newt Gingrich in a very important role in their administration, because I'll tell you what, we need your voice now more than ever, Newt.
We'll see. And as you know, Callista's busy writing her Ellis the Elephant series of American history books for 4 to 8-year-olds, and I'm busy. I have a new novel coming out this fall called Duplicity. So we're staying pretty busy.
I know you are, and you can, again, read all about all that and keep up with the Gingriches at gingrichproductions.com. Give Callista my best. Tell her Krispy Kreme greetings from Mike Gallagher. Okay?
I'll do it, Mike. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Newt. I appreciate you joining us. The great Newt Gingrich here on the Mike Gallagher Show, fighting the good fight, you and me together, each and every day.